Nestled in the heart of the historic city of York, the Yorkshire Museum stands as a beacon of knowledge and culture, drawing visitors from all over the world. With its rich collections spanning thousands of years, the museum offers an unrivaled journey through the region's history. However, hidden behind its magnificent exhibits and beautiful architecture lies a darker, more unsettling side. For those who work there, and for a few unfortunate visitors, the museum holds something much more than just ancient relics. It is a place haunted by restless spirits, lingering from a past filled with violence, sorrow, and untold mysteries. Before the Yorkshire Museum became the prestigious institution it is today, the land upon which it stands had long been a place of life, death, and burial. The museum was built in the 1830s, but its location on Museum Gardens was once home to the ruins of St Mary's Abbey. This abbey, founded in the 11th century, was a significant site for many years, but like so many other places of religious importance in England, it met a violent and tragic end during the dissolution of the monasteries under Henry VIII. The abbey was dismantled, its monks expelled or executed, and the bodies of those who had lived and died in this spiritual centre were left to decay in unmarked graves. Though the land was eventually cleared and repurposed, the spirits of those lost lives seem to have lingered. From the moment construction began on the museum, reports of strange occurrences began to surface, and many believed that the restless souls of the abbey's former inhabitants are the source of the hauntings still reported today. One of the most well known apparitions in the Yorkshire Museum is that of a nun. According to local legend, she was one of the many women who lived and worked at St Mary's Abbey before its tragic dissolution. The story goes that this nun was a young woman, very devoted to her faith, but she became entangled in a forbidden love affair. Tragically, her romance was discovered and she was either killed by the abbey's authorities or took her own life in despair. The ghostly nun is often seen near the entrance of the museum or in the quieter corners of the building. Witnesses have reported seeing a pale, ethereal figure wearing a habit, her face obscured by a veil. Some visitors describe her as floating rather than walking, her footsteps silent as she moves across the room. Others have noticed the air growing cold in her presence, and many report a profound sense of sadness, as if the very essence of her sorrow fills the room. Though her presence seems to be mostly benign, there are those who feel a deep unease when near the spot where she is most often seen. The feeling of being watched is common, and on occasion, some visitors have felt a soft touch on their shoulder, only to turn around and find no one there. Another ghost that haunts the Yorkshire Museum is that of a monk. Descriptions of this apparition are more sinister than those of the nun. Staff members who have worked in the museum, particularly in the older galleries, have reported seeing a tall, shadowy figure dressed in dark robes, sometimes standing at the edge of their vision before disappearing into thin air. Unlike the nun, this monk's spirit is not described as sorrowful but rather as angry or restless. The monk's origins are unclear, though it is believed that he could be another one of the abbey's inhabitants, perhaps one of the monks who was executed or left behind in the wake of the abbey's downfall. His ghost is often seen near the medieval collections as if he's still guarding the artifacts that once belonged to his abbey. Some people who have encountered the monk report feeling an overwhelming sense of dread when near him. One visitor to the museum, a local historian, described feeling a cold, suffocating pressure on their chest when standing near a particular exhibit. They turned, expecting to find someone behind them, but found only the emptiness of the darkened room. When they returned to the same area later, they could still feel the oppressive weight of the monk's presence, and the sensation lasted long after they left the room. In addition to the apparitions, the Yorkshire Museum is often and also home to a significant amount of poltergeist activity. Employees and visitors alike have reported hearing strange noises, like footsteps echoing in the empty galleries or the unmistakable sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor, even when no one is around. One staff member recalled hearing a loud crash in the middle of the night while working late in the museum. Upon investigating, they discovered that a large stone statue had fallen from its pedestal despite no one being near it. There are no sounds of forced entry, no signs of forced entry, and the statue had been in place for years without issue. Another incident took place in one of the museum's quieter rooms, where several books had been neatly arranged on a shelf. When the staff member returned to the room, the books were scattered across the floor, as if they had been violently thrown. No one was near the shelf at the time, and no logical explanation could be found for the disturbance. Beneath the Yorkshire Museum lies an old crypt, where the remains of St Mary's Abbey's monks were once buried. Though the catacombs are not always open to the public, they are still part of the museum's foundation, and many believe that the spirits of those who were laid to rest there still linger in the building above. Those who have ventured into the crypt area claim that the atmosphere is stifling and oppressive, and if the weight of centuries of death and sorrow hangs heavy in the air, some have felt a cold draught brushing against their skin, while others report hearing faint whispers, as though someone is speaking just out of earshot. One particularly unsettling account comes from a curator who was tasked with cataloguing items in the museum's lower levels late one evening. The curator swears they heard the sound of footsteps echoing from the darkened corridors of the crypt. Thinking it was another staff member, they called out, but when no response came, they ventured deeper into the catacombs, only to find nothing but the cold silence of the dead. The hauntings of the Yorkshire Museum are a stark reminder of the long, turbulent history of York. Though the museum has been a place of learning and discovery for over a century, it is still built upon a foundation of death and destruction. The ghosts of the abbey, whether the sorrowful nun, the vengeful monk, or the invisible poltergeist, seem to remain, unable or unwilling to leave the museum's halls. The tragic events that unfolded here centuries ago still echo through the rooms and corridors, and for those who are tuned to the presence of the past, the spirit of York's medieval history are never far away. For the brave souls who visit, the Yorkshire Museum offers a fascinating exploration of the past, but it is also a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead seem to blur, reminding us that history is never truly gone.